Hypothesizing an analog relationship between architecture and music suggests that an examination of the two together could uncover the unique properties of each. Tonight we add a chapter to the Music is Architecture is Music discourse. Mack Scogin is an architect from the American South. Bertolt Brecht is a composer, poet, and playwright from the German East. 80 years ago, Brecht wrote and composed a performance piece. I know. 80 years ago, Brecht wrote and composed a performance piece he called the Three-Penny Opera. Traditional opera, Handel, Mozart, Wagner, follows prescribed storylines. Antique heroes wear powdered wigs, sing classic songs, and battle mythic monsters on marble battlements. The pro forma is established: set, plot, character, language, music, and dance. The Three-Penny Opera, also known as the Beggar's Opera, demolishes the historic prototype and proposes a radically different operatic lexicon. Brecht introduces a melodious street corner-like jargon. More Kanye West and Taylor Swift. Yeah. I didn't think I knew that. You don't. Less Amadeus. Characters never a part of the standard opera scene inhabit Brecht's proletarian stage. The historic celebration of the proprieties of royalty, the church, and the political establishment is reversed. Life on the battlements is now life on the toughest of street corners, with a context of interchangeable pimps, cops, and thieves. And Brecht's lead character is the infamous street-savvy killer, the leader of a gang of thieves named, of all things, Mack the Knife. Opera has a new hero, and so does architecture. Mack the First plots with the police, works with the politicos, consorts with the bankers, hangs with the bishops, but is surreptitiously his own strategist, calculating each maneuver according to his own rules and objectives. Mack the Knife writes a new sociology of sordid relationships and redefines what is admirable, brave, and inventive on opera's cyclorama. Ditto Mack Scogin, whose work tells both his own story and ours on architecture's contemporary street corner. Like his operatic alter ego, Mack discourses with the establishment, the GSA University, GSA, university presidents, financiers, and private clients, on toward surreptitious ends, which are clearly anti-establishment. And the establishees still don't get it. Scogin's architecture provides a new valuation of artistic value, as did his musical predecessor, often delivered as an a priori unrecognizable vision of form and space. Mack, too, continues to contest the precedents that continue to define architectural meanings, both others and his own, and in so doing has become an essential sing-song voice in the American architecture of inquiry. I remember visiting Mack Scogin in Atlanta a number of years ago to see his new library. I was astonished. The library was an experimental project that could have as easily originated in Los Angeles. Disowning the South, Mack brought it a new life. Bit by bit, Mack challenged the Southern tradition, rewrote the storyline, and finally nationalized his message. Musical performance is architecture. Mack Scogin is Mack the Knife. Brecht's lead outlaw, Mack the First, established a career prototype for Mack the Second. Here comes Mackie sneaking around the corner. Please welcome Mack the Scogin to SCI-Arc.
Oh my goodness. I don't know what to say about that intro other than I had a student, Eric, where are you? I had a student to a house for Lil Wang and the Yin Yang Twins, by the way, just last semester. That tops your Kanye West. They happen to be from Atlanta. I'm going to step, but by the time the night's over, I will be on my back right here with this step, I'm sure. I've got to go fast in this. I wanted to start by, well, first of all, I should start by saying thank you very, very, very much for inviting me out. It's just it's a great privilege to come out here to see this fantastic school, which Merrill, my partner, and I have admired for many, many years. It's an incredible institution, started and kept alive by amazing people, and we respect it greatly, the work and the people that come out of it. And so it's a real privilege and honor. It's also a great privilege to have so many people in the audience that I'm great admirers of. So thank you all very much for coming. Thought I'd say a couple of words about teaching, which is still very close to my heart and to my time. I spent a lot of time with it and have for about 20 years now. A few years ago, I had Merrill, Elam, my partner, which I could mention her name, by the way, every single sentence. Just act like it. Every time I show something, remember her name. Merrill drugged me kicking and screaming up to New York City to see an exhibition on quilts. And to me, that's not exactly the reason I would want to go to New York City, spend an entire day looking at quilts. But she made me do it. And a lot of you probably know about the quilts at G's Bend. Went to the Guggenheim, and it was filled with these absolutely astonishing quilts. They were absolutely amazing. Done by a group of African American women in a place called G's Bend, which is literally at the bend of the Alabama River in the middle of absolutely nowhere. Took a group of Harvard students down there, kind of naively, very naively, quite naively, showed up, drove up to this little house in the middle of absolutely nowhere, thinking, where is the place? And this really quite large woman comes out of the house with the most beautiful smile you've ever seen in your life, and went around to every single student and gave them a huge bear hug and a kiss. And those students, I've never seen a group of students so dislocated in my life. It was incredible. And the whole time there we were dislocated and absolutely didn't know what to do. We didn't have a program, we just went there. I thought I'd figure it out. Well, I didn't really figure it out. We came back. The only thing I could think about them doing was just simply drawing the quilts. And so they spent a long time, the entire semester, drawing the quilts. They could only use a computer, and they could not, everything had to be a line. It was amazing what they learned about They learned everything about these quilts. They learned exactly how many people worked on them, where their fingers touched the quilt, front and back. And over time, they evolved into something of their own. The most amazing project that came out of it was this project. You can see a little bit of it there. A young woman in the studio decided to do a 5-mile-long pew, red pew, through the area of G's Bend. This is a project that the last few years I've been teaching the studio, where I have the students tell me a little bit about themselves. They pick a site that is interesting to them. They never pick a buildable site. They never, it's amazing. I shouldn't say that never. Maybe 3 or 4 out of 13 or 14 students pick sites that are actually buildable. This student picked a site on the Mississippi River. You know, it's like a 20-mile-long site. She got fascinated with this drawing of the Mississippi. And I think she thought, well, I'll get him, let him try to figure out what kind of program, and then I would give them a program. So I gave her a zoo. And of course, what she started to do was to actually design the animals for the zoo, and then wrote a narrative. This was an animal that actually watered the other animals. It would go around and stick its pogo stick in the Mississippi and then come and water the other animals to keep them going. And the animal's job, it's a long story, I won't go into it. A few years ago, I was talking to Sambo Motley about architecture and architecture education, and he told me this story. He lived out in the middle of nowhere, like he's been, and of course ran the little studio. And he and his wife had a couple of kids, and after like several years of never going out, they decided to go out, and the young son had gotten to the age where he could stay with the other kids and sort of keep them, and of course they told them to be careful, blah, 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 all the stuff you tell teenagers when you leave them behind. They went out, they drove all the way to Selma or wherever, and went to a movie, came back home late at night, came up to the house, went across the veranda, and Sambo looked down, and there was a condom on the veranda floor. He said he just got irate. Went upstairs, flung open the door to his son's room, woke him up, startled him, said, "What's the meaning of this? I found a condom on the veranda floor." And his son looked at him, unmoved, and said, "What's a veranda?" This actually is a motorcycle shop, again, in Birmingham, Alabama, where a guy makes motorcycles that he sells to people here in Los Angeles and shakes and whatnot in Dubai. What's fabulous about the motorcycle, if you know anything about motorcycles, is it has no frame. The motor, the engine itself is actually the frame itself. You can't tell it from here, but what he does, he takes the tank and he actually puts it down here to lower the gravity of the center of gravity of the motorcycle, so supposedly you go faster with corners, etc. Absolutely beautiful motorcycle. I didn't show you the pictures. It's an incredible motorcycle. This is, I think, one of the most beautiful projects. In fact, I think the most beautiful project I've ever seen in my whole life is Enrique Morales' house, home in Barcelona, Enrique in Benedetta. And he's somebody that, I think he's one of the, if not the greatest, one of the great architects of our time. And he does stuff like this, where he merges materials in ways that completely bring into question the origin of materiality. You have no idea if the steel came first, the wood came first, or if this is a piece of steel wood, or if it's something that was under construction. It's just a complete reinvention and very simple idea that works in asking questions. It just simply asks a question. Same thing like Carnegie, who asks great questions, political questions, religious questions, that got in a lot of trouble asking. But simply his ability to transform those questions into amazing pieces of art that are undeniable, gave him relevance, gave him credibility, and gave him great life of controversy and accomplishment. This is actually a handrail in a building out here, before they Savetti, Dr. Machado did. And I think this is amazing for almost the same reasons, where for some reason they thought that you had to have a stone handrail on a stone wall that they wanted to then grab hold of and actually work as a true handrail. They would merge these things together. And I just love this because I love the idea that they know enough about materials and enough about the experience of something very, very simple. Just simply grabbing a handrail and walking up the stair that transforms the handrail from that functional use into something that is truly artistic and again, asks a great question. Is the handrail part of the wall part of the handrail? What made this dimple? Is it a little indention, etc.? I'm going to run through a couple of pairs of slides of projects that we did, that actually some of them date back to when we started our firm 25 years ago. This is the first house we ever did, the Chmar house. And this was called the bug house. And we called it the bug house because that's what Merrill called it. She did it it was the first time they'd ever done anything for a gallery in a museum. It was a show on the next Millennium House. And she thought it'd be a great idea if you could do it, of course, coming from the South, if you could do a house that was above. Her theory was if you got high enough up, you would be above the, quote, bug line, and you could live basically outside. What was interesting about the Chmar house is the people that wanted this house believed in a Japanese sort of new religion called Arikari, and they believed that light, you gave and you received light, that you would somehow be enlightened, and they didn't want their house to touch the ground. This is Wolfsburg, Germany. I'll show you a lot of competitions that we didn't win, by the way. This is actually the site of the Science Museum that Zaha won the competition for. This is the Volkswagen plant that Hitler and Dr. Porsche built the Volkswagen. That's the city. That's the plant. That's the site. This is a site for a children's museum in Pittsburgh, where we were given the job to renovate that building. We thought the job would be to do this and this and this and this and that and this. You can tell the scale is. We were like 450 in the air because the stacks on the Volkswagen plant were up that high. I think that's why. I don't know. Merrill came back with a whole bunch of shots of the sky instead of the site. This was a horizontal program, was to expand this building in the block. We expanded it horizontally. Horizontal addition to a high-rise building in Basel, Switzerland, the Bank of International Settlements. Toyo Ito won that. Frank Gehry won this one. This was the University of Connecticut art school. House in Maine on the right, Satellite Museum in Mellon on the left. Branch Library in suburbia, outside Atlanta. Guess I have to admit that's our house. Merrill had never asked for anything, but known her for 40-something years. Never asked for anything. Tornado, hurricane actually came through Atlanta and destroyed our house. And so for some reason, she decided that she wanted a lap pool. And there's no place to put a lap pool and get any sun except on the front of our house. So this is the front of the second floor of our house. It's against all the codes to have a pool in your front yard, so we just raised it up. I never said anything about it. That's the library, the house, that's the pool. Showroom for Herman Miller in Atlanta. Stuytown, Peter Cooper Village in New York City, where about 35,000 people live. We actually have a developer as a client. They happen to own that. And we looked at what they might do with it. Study for actually the competition to do a new campus for Harvard across the Cambridge River. Cambridge. Factory for Herman Miller in Atlanta, outside of Atlanta. Michael Van Valkenburg was who we worked with a lot on our projects, and they were the landscape architects for both of these. This was our second gallery attempt at installation of a gallery, the Stutz Gallery in New York. This is a house. It was based on the Monkey Grammarian and Chris Farley's Saturday Night Live skit about the guy that lives down by the river in the trailer. These are a series of houses that are actually under construction in China, in Shanghai. By the way, we never got to hang the thing in Stutz Gallery because we thought it would be really neat to make this thing out of asphalt. This asphalt, we wanted real asphalt. We had asphalt cast and put it in this frame. It's like, I think it's like 6 by 6, it's quite large. And no one could lift it. We drove it all the way to New York City. And in New York City, I think they just were embarrassed by it. Anyway, it never got done. This is in India, where we've been working on a new town, housing. Actually, Alejandro, who's here this week, is part of the group that's working on this. And a new U.S. courthouse for Austin, Texas, that's just started construction. It's like a 2,000-page report on back at Harvard again, where we're trying to figure out how to transform the entire Cambridge campus to something that's friendly and welcoming and to create some common space in which there is absolutely none on the campus. A new residence hall at Syracuse University is just being finished. School of Automotive Research in Clemson, house in North Florida Mountains. And I didn't realize it until today. I was looking through this and it just hit me. This is our first project that we ever did. It was a library outside Atlanta that Merrill wanted to paint it to look like that. And then she told me to go tell the client. And then this is something that we just finished a few months ago. It's just a lobby renovation. It's very southern because we talked them into doing a chandelier. Mack pulled out a sack. Little Mack, we called it. So we're here in the audience. Did that for us. Ohio State University, where we did a new school of architecture, landscape architecture, and city and regional planning, putting them all housed together collectively, I think for the first time in one building. And the real key to this is that that's the entire site, the limits of the site. It's all about bringing in, letting the building be slightly shaped and all the parts of the building structure, et cetera, being informed, all these kind of force lines around it. And a project that we just finished with Carnegie Mellon that was almost antithesis of this, where at literally the back door of the campus, in an 85-foot deep hole, literally 85 feet in elevation from that down to the lowest part of the site, we were supposed to do a new school of computer science. Very complex, with sewers running through it, rock, all this stuff. It's fun to have to deal with. In the case of Ohio State, as it evolved, the idea was to let this be a very, very simple, well, we call it a box. It's not actually a box, it has an obvious shape to it. But invest the interior in the section of the building with all this kind of energy of the architecture. And then to just make these kind of incisions as it started out to try to create a place to do some landscape architecture, but also to create a box that's filled with natural light, literally as many hours of the day as possible. Carnegie Mellon is a whole different ballgame where this is their program, 310 individual offices, and they wanted them to all be different. They want everybody to be able to look at the building. I'm not making this up now. Look at the building and be able to see their window. And they wanted them at the same time to be able to associate with some kind of collective effort. So you're asking architects, you're asking architecture to sponsor the individual and the collective equally, with no compromise to either one. Well, I think when you do that, there's probably a number of ways of doing it. What we chose to do was to take that programmatic collection and distribute it this way. This could be a plan. It happens to be a section, but it could be a plan where you're taking those dots and you're creating various conditions of collectiveness within them and then across from them. To actually pull a collection of them away to even make two buildings out of one building. And then we zoned the teaching in some of the collective spaces down below because the research, of course, is off limits to sort of the general public and the general student body. So this is a model that sort of takes the skin away, but you get the idea about the energy of the section. There's actually subtle differences in many ways between floor plates. Very rational distribution, public space on lower, faculty in the middle, studios and the library on top, shops and stuff down below. Carnegie Mellon is a very different condition where it literally does turn into kind of a spaghetti situation. Because you never get to build the spaghetti. We have to straighten it up. As straight as possible. Spaghetti. Anyway, it's straightened up. So this is the This has just been finished. We really don't have finished photography for it. I wanted to include it. So OSU and Carnegie. I'll run through the OSU slides. I don't have to say much about this. I think you kind of get it. There's this central ramp. There is actually not a ramp. It's in fact a 1 in 20 slope, so it's not really a ramp. It's actually a social space. It cuts through the whole building. It takes a very long time to go up that ramp all the way to the library. It's the world's slowest building. And you open up the section, where all of these the studio space, library space, classroom, all of it sort of visually and physically interacts. Great challenge, to create in today's world, I think, to create an architecture still that still needs fit-up space, still needs collective space, still needs natural light, even though everybody is looking at those machines. So how do you actually balance all that? I think it's quite a challenge. This is the library at the top, and it has its little landscape. One thing that I think is client, namely Bob Livesey, a lot of you I'm sure know, was insisted upon, and this whole building was to say that this was a building that was as much about the campus as it was just the School of Architecture and the public. And he wanted to make sure that everybody was welcome here. In fact, that it was a porous condition where the public could pour through it freely. They even used the courtyard here. I guess we can call that a courtyard. We had these columns we had to install. We didn't design those columns. Somebody at OSU. Chuck may have had something to do with this. Anyway, they tailgated because the stadium's right across the street. Ping pong, I don't know if they still use those. But so all these things, like this is the entrance to the auditorium, this is the shop. All these things are kind of expressed only in moments on the exterior and in this section. The space is used a lot by students that are doing all sorts of reading strings things. Other schools come in and do performances, etc. Some of the things they have installed there is great to watch during the year. That they get up there occasionally and it's just, sorry, doing something wrong. Carnegie Mellon, very different kind of context. I love this shot of Andrew Carnegie, who's made arguably one of the most inventive schools of all time. It's an incredible place. I don't know if you know much about it. When they started it out, and he worked with Hornbostel, Henry Hornbostel, I think one of the most fascinating American architects you never see much about. We've known him for years because he did Emory University quadrangle in Atlanta, and we marveled at his buildings there. They're at once completely classical and traditional and completely inventive. That's Henry. You should look up his work. But what's interesting about it is that, Carnegie puts, and Hornbostel get together, and at the initial, we call it lawn, they put the power plant at one end. And Hornbostel's the one that actually talked to him and said, if you're going to do a technical school, you need an art school. So at the other end of the big lawn, they do the art school. Very strange, like that's a power plant. Bob Stern said that was the most beautiful chimney smokestack you'd ever seen. That in the context, of course. He did weird things like that. This was the School for Domestic Sciences for women. He does this, he also do this kind of frilly stuff. And then this is the engineering school where, oddly, that building has a corridor, this ramp, the entire distance. forget what the change in elevation is, but all these entrances to these buildings are off this thing. You walk down this ramp and everything seems sort of disoriented. Anyway, going back to the little diagram before, you know, how do you do this and do it within budgets and stuff like that? Try out a little bit of everything. Go back to the analysis of the site. Try to take that spaghetti form and give it a little bit more rational condition without losing its intent. We took what was existing here and turned the back door again to the campus. It had only this much green and actually introduced, by building the building, adding a couple hundred more thousand square feet to the area, but at the same time creating that much more green space in the campus. So all of a sudden you got two zones in the campus. You've got the lawn here and what they call the cut that actually is this L-shaped organization to the campus. And we created another sort of field condition, a whole different zone of the campus by simply just placing the building in the middle of this and bringing all this together in different kinds of composition. I'll just run through these plans real quick. If you watch the blue is classroom. Let me go back real quick to make sure we got this right. The pink is common space, and then the other is office. I'm just going to flip through these. You get the idea. I mean, I'm trying to tell you that there's a rationale behind the shape. It reaches out to bordering buildings. It actually physically connects to a lot of them. We're attempting to make a perimeter that will accommodate 310 offices. And I think the office is pretty big. They're like 200 square feet each one. For a factory office is pretty generous. But you get the idea. The other sort of feature of the building is that there's several sort of small atria in the building, and then there's this kind of helix condition with a classroom in the middle where you come across this bridge from the cut, keeping in mind that that's an 85-foot drop below you, down which all the people that are going to classes, which are undergraduates, down to that lower level, they access it through that helix. The idea is you're pulling the program apart, you're looking back and forth, you're creating all these kind of collective conditions. And that is a collective condition, that is. They're all sort of slightly different, but at the same time, there's this singular sort of identity as an individual. I think you get it. In the section, it gets dispersed somehow. So there you can see the original impossible cut one there. You're in the middle of all this stuff. Flip by the window thing very quick. That's huge controversy with lots of people. I was walking across the bridge the other day, and there's this dad and his son in front of me, and the father turns to the son and says, "The outside's really ugly." He said, "But the inside's so okay." And they came into this space, and the son turns to him and said, "Wait, Lulu." You know, it's funny. We did a short discussion. This is not what this presentation is that it is an interesting issue about ugliness, what's ugly and what's not, and the fine line between something ugly and something beautiful. That's fascinating to us, and I would say that if you can't argue something as ugly just as easily as you can as beautiful, you've just got prettiness. Anyway, like I say, we don't like to have definition. Photography kind of hard to understand the complexity and the variety of the spaces. It's pretty weird. That was the bridge we were walking across. This is a bridge we just dedicated to Randy Pausch. I don't know if you may have read the last lecture. He was a computer scientist that taught at school and died of cancer this year. There's a story about that. Two more projects. I'll try to maybe, I'm not going to talk that much about it, but I'll try to show you more about our process if we have one. This is Yale University. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. This is sort of the old part of the campus, the New Haven Green. This is the cemetery that borders the campus. And this is an area of the campus that is being, Bob Stern is doing 2 new colleges over here. You can see that the sciences and business school, etc., are sort of expanding to the east and the north. This is a public park, and we've given this site as a competition. We tried to design this site. This is the police station, and they wanted to put on this site the health services facility, which is basically a hospital for the students, but also for the insurance program that many people use for many years for their health services their whole lives. So it's an odd program, and it's an odd block because it's not any academic program on it. That's the police station, that's the proposed garage with our building, and then our building. Well, I'm not going to go through all this, you get the idea. The fact is that we didn't really know it at the time, but they had failed a number of times with other architects to get a site design that anybody would like. And I think the reason was that the health people, the people that run this building, were part of the selection process, as they should be. They had the competition, and we came up with this shape, never having done a building of this type, and we thought it actually made some sense with the site, and in fact can make some sense in terms of the interior of the building. We actually did in the competition put all the rooms in it, 850 rooms in this little building. But the idea, as you saw in those diagrams, was that you created a condition that is somewhat analogous to the Yale blocks, the traditional blocks. And is also analogous to the overall campus where you had green space, concentration of buildings in courtyard, green space, building courtyard. So the argument was that, we just sort of fit right in. It's very contextual. When you actually look at these things, you realize the kind of variety they have. That's ceremonies, dorms. Easily said, when you try to cram it all on there with the parking garage, like that, it's really hilarious. There's an 8 and there's a C and there's an O. It's funny, the students in the room, if you think architects with a lot of experience don't get lost, you're wrong. If you don't get lost, you're not going to ever find anything. So we get lost a lot. So we ended up with something like this. you know, from a conceptual point of view, this looked about right to us. And the idea was to create this building that had as we moved away from these, that had a kind of softness to it that could be read as something that is somewhat almost human in the way it moved and changed, and had some actual motion to it. The kinds of things that this type of building, very few people talk about. We also looked carefully at the technical part of this building and the program for it to see if there was a way to evolve it. You know, I don't know. Maybe some of you have had a different experience, but every time I've ever gone to the doctor, everybody I've ever talked to has gone to a doctor. It's a really dismal process. And if you can imagine going to a building with all the people that you either teach or that you work for or that you've known all your life, and it becomes like a social event on top of a really kind of, I don't even like to think about it, actually. But this is why. It's because it's designed for the people that work there. Our idea was to design it for the people that come there for help. And to change that diagram so that you're always moving through it in a way that it gets more and more private. So you're actually pulling away from the public. You're actually having a more discreet condition, and that you're always moving towards light. So it gives you a very, very different kind of program. I mean, a diagram, or plan diagram. This is the competition course. Plan diagram for a building type that's normally very just right dressed. We take all the doctors and we put them in a collective zone at a very prominent part of the building, but we allow the actual user of the building, the patient, the privilege of seeing out, and the privilege of always moving towards light, and the privilege of having a discrete experience in the building. So it works in both section and plan. So none of the floors line up. This is a totally ridiculous idea, frankly. Very difficult to build. Where you got 850 rooms that are systematic in some way. They have to be in order to gain efficiency. But at the same time, none of the floor plates are the same. What was most exciting about this was that the people that operate the building over time were completely won over. We were able to show them that this building was much more efficient than if it was an orthogonal building. It was much more efficient than all the buildings that they had looked at before. And in fact, we reduced the square footage of the building and the actual program of the building pretty significantly, because that's what they wanted. They wanted a very, very efficient building. So it sort of sold itself. The landscape, again, Michael Van. I'll just flip through these. You can sort of get it where you see it as an organization for the building. These are like specialty clinics, and then the doctors are here. Keeping in mind this is an HMO, so that these doctors are only there for short periods of time. There's a lot of little bitty rooms. So the idea was, how do you make something that has a Yale look to it? Our argument was that the Yale had this weird condition where they have buildings that are immensely heavy, or they could be read as very, very light. I think the Carnegie Library is the best example of that. But also there are other buildings, where it looks like this in that direction, and then it just completely collapses. But these big sort of, maybe the original blog building here. The Sheridan thing is amazing. And I think that's exactly what you picked up on. This, after rerun this, by the way, if you're up there, next time you should go see it. It's just spectacular. So again, what happens when you take this kind of approach, you get a whole bunch of different conditions. Again, every clinic is slightly different. It's hard to explain. I don't think we've ever represented the exterior wall very well, but it's not normal. It sort of flows and undulates. The brick we designed to give it a kind of head, it wants heaviness to it, a roughness, a texture, but at the same time heavy. So it has a bullnose kind of effect to it that catches sun from the top. That's the main entry lobby. Doctors featuring. Anyway, you get the idea. You come in, you're going in different directions. You come into a kind of a triangular situation, and you're going off in 3 different directions. And the further you go, the more private it gets. So you go down the exam room towards the light above these. Perkins and Will was our consultant for medical stuff, and their masters doing these things. Scale is very deceptive. This is about 70 feet tall. Michael, we looked at your leaning brick details and stuff. We'd leaned some brick before, but you did pretty good. Our brick was unfortunately heavier because it had this bullnose sticking out of it, so not so easy. Again, it's very difficult to tell the level of distortion that it's interesting that now that I look at this, I realize it's kind of a cross between Carnegie and Mellon, where all the windows are slightly different. It's just what is behind them. And then these cuts at OSU, where we cut into the building and bring light into the depth of the building. You gotta have all these drawings. We tried everything to describe this, parametric drawings, all sorts of things. In the end, it's just guys out there stacking the brick on top of each other and running screens and things. That's what it boils down to. I would say some of these bricks, like that little guy right there, cost about $30. This is not a cheap building. The only thing that's really is the exterior skin, and Yale was just determined to do this. They really were excited about it. We were very, very pleased. This was a mock-up. That actually, would go on up to like here. You can see something nice. Just leaning out. You kind of get an idea. Like, that's not a mistake. None of these are mistakes. It's so funny, the guy's building this, one day I come up to you and you're out there and he said, "You're the architect, right?" Yes. He said, I tell you, he's got all these buildings around here, they got all this stuff on them and everything, and this one's just like plain Jane. It's just like, are you sure this is what you want? And then you get the other guys that come up to you and say, I'm telling you right now, everybody's going to think it's just a big mistake. It's just like we didn't lay the brick. They may be right. Okay. It does overlook the cemetery, which is another whole discussion. Okay, last part. At Wellesley College, fantastic. I don't know if some of you again may have been there. One of the most distinguished and distinctive campuses ever, and completely beautiful, fantastic. It's a women's college. also gave them this idea that when he visited there years ago, that you should keep building on all the hills. Don't build in the valleys. is it's just totally inscrutable. I mean, you can't find your way around it. You know, it's the antithesis of the Thomas Jefferson idea of the great American campus. This is the campus. The woman that was the president when we were working on this graduated from there, had been president for 12 years, and she told me one day, and said, you know, every single time I come out of the building, I have to stop and think about where I am and where I'm going and how I'm going to get there. It's not instinctive. You just can't get used to it. So that's the diagram of it, and it's fantastic. And it's fantastic in that what it does, it takes the idea of the campus and it truly privileges each one of these buildings. So it's a decentered, or I would say not decentered, but multi-centered campus. And they're very aware of this. The client understands that this is the essence of the pedagogy of the school. They are totally invested in this idea. They understand that it comes from the landscape, not the buildings, but from the landscape. And that they are committed to maintaining that idea, even in their buildings, because the buildings, even though some of them seem very traditional in terms of style, well, Rudolph, Maneo, everybody that's done work since has been challenged by the university to create something that, in fact, is decentered. So how do you do that? How do you go about doing that? Well, they had a competition not to do the building, but again to select a site, go over on the campus, look at it, find a site, and then make a recommendation. Well, we spent a lot of time there. We had worked with Michael Van Hartberg on a master plan board, and we understood the campus, I think, pretty well, and that nature of it, this decentered nature of it. And so we ended up recommending a site that was totally surprising, everybody thought we were a bit nuts. It was the back door of the campus, the western end of it. There's a dirt parking lot and another dirt parking lot. You couldn't see it, but it actually was a site that allowed multiple views of these centers, other centers of the campus. But in order to do this site, you had to do all these other projects. You couldn't just do the building. If you built the building here, you had to change 40 acres of the campus. They thought that was a good idea. They thought it was a good idea because it had everything to do with what they believe this building to be. They've been talking about building this building for 60 years. They had a building committee together for like 12 years or something like that. So it's not something that has not been thought about. It's not something that they didn't develop a discourse around. Very simple problem, but very difficult because they thought there was a chance that it would never, it would never be used, literally never be used. Models and draws in section and thinks in plan. I do just the opposite. I draw in plan, and I do draw, like really draw. And think in section. Very quickly, just a diagram. I wanted these in because I wanted the students to understand that, there's a responsibility that one has to truly understand the site and the stuff that you're taught here in the school about this kind of thing is not something that you should listen to because you have to do it, I think, if you're going to do successful work. The weird part about this site was we understood that what was going to happen, you were going to have an L-shaped circulation. It's like the death knell of architectural planning. Very, very hard to solve. But what it did do was create a number of entrances to the building that would make it something that could welcome people from, again, not just from a plan standpoint, but also from a sectional standpoint. So that's a very strange diagram for a building. You know, we don't have to express this form, and we don't have to express this, all of this sort of research. There are other ways of doing it, I'm sure. And I have questions, people ask questions like, why would you make all that form? Well, the idea is that when people go there, that they kind of get it, and that they understand that there's this kind of texture of plan and planning that creates spaces that at once are autonomous and are all a part of some weird, strange system. We sent our engineers, the Arab famous international engineers, these floor plans, and they called back and said for background drawings, they called back and said, when we got the axon drawings, could you go ahead and send us the real floor plans? That's the section of, the other, one part of what we proposed to them was to build a parking garage, which again, on a campus this small, 2,500 students, seemed absolutely ridiculous. But by building this parking garage, we get all the cars out of the valley, and then we get all the cars off the academic hill, and we create flow through our building by actually going under the entry drive into the building. I felt compelled to put these in because I wanted to show that we do windows. We do models. I think we do pretty much all the stuff you guys are doing here, except you do it a lot better. We did a little bit more cutting edge. You know, what happens when you take this kind of this idea about privileging each room and privileging each experience, and at the same time taking things like, you know, what is normally the atrium space and saying it's not an atrium, it's not at the center. You got to put it off to the side because you don't want it centered. You put it down in the basement, and then you got to reach up and get light to capture it. All of a sudden, the form begins to, in effect, generate itself. Some may argue it looks like it generated itself really weirdly. We argued that it fit right in with the, by the way, the rest of the building. At some moment, by the way, they got cold feet, and they said, why don't we take off all this stuff? And we did a model of it, and brought the trustees in, and they all decided they wanted. We said, you took all the architecture off, and they said, oh, you're right. We just put the architecture back on. And then let's just increase the size of the garage. Anyway, I don't want to do this. Paul Rudolph is a fantastic building on campus. We used it as a reference point for the way in which we articulated the skin of the building, where he picks up on the kind of detailing, kind of zoning of these more classical buildings, you know, the big bay window, the trim of everything. Everybody that goes to Wellesley, they can't quite figure out why we detailed it like a classical building, but it's supposedly a modern building. So you get a lot of, we're very conscious of the fact that you've got trim everywhere. They did not want another brick building. It's not brick, it's slate. Couldn't have built this in brick. That's the valley. The students wanted a red bar. You know, the argument about this is reflecting light back over here. When you're sitting here looking back in this direction, you're always in contact with another space within this building. It's a discrete space, but you can look back and see other people in it. You can barely find it in the landscape. It changes the scale dramatically as you move around. That's the big light scope of the major space at the bottom. snows right through the building. Project manager and the president, I kept telling them, it's gonna snow, there's a hole up here, and there's nothing on top of it, and it will snow in the wintertime. This is actually the fresh air intake in the main stair, fresh air intake to the mechanical above. We kept saying, now watch it, look, it's not gonna snow. They called us the first day it snowed, and it was snowing in the building, they all went rushing down to see it. It's just, you were right. The center of the building, of those dots, that's all the student organizations, 230-something student organizations and a 2,500 population of students. We even had to design a space that they could do. The hoop was under the stair space that they could do what they wanted to do. Anyway, I wanted to end with these plans because what do you do your plan to look like that? And how do I explain why you do it? You do it because I can tell you, I know that when you're in this room, that the experience in this room from here to here to here, no matter where you are, you get a different experience. Completely different experience. So anybody in those slides will show you, somebody sitting in the window is just as unique as somebody sitting here, as somebody sitting over there. The places you sit in here, you don't get any view at all. You can't see out. It's an idea, it's the whole thing about making an architecture that has this kind of embodied energy to it, an embodied variety, not flexibility, but just variety. It gets a little caustic, variety does. Thank you.